There is a particular kind of emptiness that doesn't announce itself dramatically. It arrives quietly, settling into your life so gradually you might not even notice its presence until it's become your normal. Colors seem less vibrant. Music doesn't move you quite the same way. Even moments that should bring joy, achievements, celebrations, beautiful days, they register more in your mind than in your heart. You go through all the motions of living, but something essential feels missing. Not sadness exactly, not pain, but absence, as if there's a thin pane of glass between you and your own life. You smile at the right times. You say the right things. From the outside, perhaps no one would even know. But inside, there's a dullness, a flatness, a sense of watching your life rather than fully living it. You find yourself thinking, I should be feeling more right now, or why can't I just enjoy this? And those questions only deepen the disconnect, adding a layer of self-judgment to the numbness that's already there. What most people don't realize about emotional numbness is that it isn't a character flaw or a sign of weakness. It's not laziness or ingratitude. It's a protective response, one that likely served you well at some point, because feeling nothing was safer than feeling everything. Because somewhere along the way, your emotions became too intense, too overwhelming, too dangerous to fully experience. And so, your system did exactly what it was designed to do. It created distance. It turned down the volume. It placed that pane of glass between you and your feelings to keep you functioning, to keep you safe. Maybe it happened during a period of overwhelming stress or loss. Maybe it was a slow accumulation of smaller hurts and disappointments. Maybe you grew up in an environment where certain emotions weren't welcome, or where you had to be the strong one, the one who held it all together. Or maybe the numbness arrived during a time when feeling would have simply been too much, when emotional distance was the only way to keep moving forward. The origins may differ, but the experience is remarkably similar. A sense of going through life on autopilot, a feeling of being disconnected from your own heart, a quiet, persistent question, is this all there is? And with it, the fear that maybe something in you is fundamentally broken, that maybe you're just not wired for the kind of aliveness, the kind of joy, the kind of emotional richness that others seem to experience so naturally. But here's the truth that's rarely spoken about this state. Numbness isn't the absence of feeling. It's feeling in hiding. Those emotions haven't disappeared. They've simply gone underground. They're still there, influencing your choices, your relationships, your sense of what's possible. They're just no longer available to your conscious awareness in the same way. And that disconnect between what you feel and what you're aware of feeling creates its own kind of suffering. A suffering that's all the more difficult because it doesn't look like suffering from the outside. The hidden cost of living this way extends far beyond just missing out on joy. When you're disconnected from your emotions, you're also disconnected from your internal guidance system, from the wisdom of your body, from the subtle signals that tell you what you need, what matters to you, when to move towards something, and when to step back. You start making decisions based on what you think you should want, rather than what you actually want. You form relationships based on who you believe you should be, rather than who you truly are. You pursue goals that look good on paper, but leave you feeling hollow. when you achieve them. And perhaps most painfully, you begin to doubt your own reality. Because in a world that celebrates feeling, that puts emotion at the center of what it means to be fully human, numbness can feel like a failure, like you're somehow doing life wrong. You watch others laugh deeply, cry openly, express anger clearly, fall in love wholeheartedly, and you wonder what they know that you don't. What secret they've discovered that allows them to be so fully alive in their own experience. This creates a particular kind of loneliness, the loneliness of being internally isolated, because authentic connection with others and with yourself requires emotional presence. It requires the ability to be touched, to be moved, to be reached. And when you're living behind that pane of glass, even the people closest to you can feel miles away. Not because they're distant, but because part of you is simply unavailable for genuine contact. Over time, this emotional disconnection becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. The longer you remain numb, the safer numbness feels. The pathways of disconnection become well-worn neural highways, while the pathways of feeling become overgrown, harder to access. You adapt to the flatness, the distance, the muted experience of your own life. You forget what it felt like to feel fully, and that forgetting itself becomes another layer of protection, because you can't miss what you can't remember. But beneath that protection lies a deeper truth, this numbness, this distance, this glass wall between you and your own life. It was never meant to be permanent. It was a temporary shelter during an emotional storm, a necessary pause in a journey that was always meant to continue, a cocoon that served its purpose, but now, if maintained indefinitely, keeps you from experiencing the full wingspan of what it means to be human. There's a wisdom in the body that's rarely acknowledged in our thinking-centered culture. Your system knows when it's safe to feel again. It knows when the conditions that necessitated emotional shutdown have changed. It knows the difference between the dangers of the past and the possibilities of the present. And it's constantly sending you signals, invitations to return to emotional aliveness, not all at once, not in a flood that might overwhelm you, but gradually at a pace that allows integration. Those invitations often come in unexpected moments. A sudden appreciation for the way light falls through leaves, a lump in your throat while watching a movie, a brief wave of tenderness toward a stranger struggling with heavy bags. These moments aren't random, they're doorways, small openings in the protective wall that's kept emotions at bay. And how you respond to these openings makes all the difference in whether they expand or close again. Most people, when they feel these flickers of emotion after a period of numbness, make one of two mistakes. They either rush toward the feeling, hungry for any emotional experience after so much flatness, pushing, forcing, trying to make the moment more than it is. Or they retreat from it, startled by the unfamiliar sensation, worried about where it might lead, afraid of losing the control that emotional distance has provided. But there's a third way, a middle path that honors both the wisdom of your protective mechanisms and your innate capacity to feel deeply. This path begins with recognition, with seeing clearly that the numbness was never your enemy. It was a friend that helped you survive, a strategy that worked for its time. And in that recognition, something softens. The internal battle between the part of you that longs to feel and the part that fears feeling begins to quiet. From this more peaceful place, you can start the gentle work of emotional re-engagement, not through force or through bypassing the numbness with artificial intensity, but through patience and profound self-compassion, through creating conditions where feelings can naturally re-emerge at their own pace, in their own time. This often begins with the body, because emotions don't just live in the mind. They're physical experiences. They're felt sensations with locations, textures, movements. When you've been emotionally numb, reconnecting with your physical self can create pathways back to feeling. Simple practices like noticing the sensation of your feet on the floor, the rhythm of your breath, the weight of your body resting on a chair. These aren't just mindfulness exercises. They're invitations to re-inhabit the very vessel where emotions are experienced. Another essential practice is slowing down enough to notice the subtle emotional shifts that are always occurring, even in states of relative numbness. Because numbness is rarely absolute. It's more like a dampening of intensity, a muting of color, rather than a complete absence. When you slow down, when you create spaces of quiet and presence in your day, you begin to detect the whispers of feeling that have been there all along, just beneath the threshold of your awareness. This noticing itself is transformative, not because it immediately brings back the vivid emotional palette you may be longing for, but because it challenges the story that you can't feel at all. It reveals that emotions haven't disappeared. They've just become quieter, requiring a different kind of listening. And that listening is a skill that develops with practice, growing stronger each time you turn your attention toward even the faintest emotional signals. As you continue this practice of attunement, of listening for the quieter emotional notes in your experience, something remarkable begins to happen. The pathways of feeling, long underused but never truly gone, begin to strengthen again. Not overnight, not in some dramatic breakthrough moment, but gradually in a natural unfolding that mirrors how a body regains strength after a long period of immobility. Through gentle, consistent movement rather than sudden exertion, this is where self-compassion becomes absolutely essential. Because this process isn't linear. There will be days of greater emotional access, followed by periods where the numbness returns, moments of surprising joy or sorrow, followed by stretches of the familiar flatness. If you meet these fluctuations with judgment, seeing the return of numbness as a failure or a regression, you recreate the very conditions that led to emotional shutdown in the first place. But if you meet them with kindness, with an understanding that your system is doing the best it can with the resources it has available, something different happens. The path remains open, even when progress seems slow. Part of this journey involves recalibrating your relationship with emotional intensity. When you've been numb for a long time, even mild emotions can feel overwhelming at first, like eyes accustomed to darkness being suddenly exposed to light. Your emotional system needs time to adjust. This doesn't mean you're fragile or doing something wrong. It means you're healing. Your capacity to feel is returning, and like any capacity that's been dormant, it requires patience as it rebuilds. Another crucial aspect is learning to differentiate between emotions and the stories your mind creates about those emotions. Because the thinking mind, in its effort to make sense of experience, often adds layers of meaning, interpretation, and prediction to simple feeling states. I'm sad becomes I'm sad, and that means something's wrong with me, and I'll always feel this way. I'm angry becomes I'm angry, and that makes me a bad person, and others will reject me if they see it. These story layers can make emotions seem far more threatening than they actually are. And when emotions feel threatening, numbness feels necessary. But what if emotions were just information? Just energy moving through your system, carrying messages about what matters to you, what you need, how you're responding to your environment. What if they weren't problems to be solved or dangers to be avoided, but simply part of the rich, complex experience of being human? From this perspective, emotional reconnection isn't about getting rid of difficult feelings or holding on to pleasant ones. It's about developing the capacity to be with whatever arises, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, without adding the extra suffering of resistance or attachment. As this capacity grows, something profound begins to shift. Life doesn't just become more emotionally intense, it becomes more emotionally nuanced. You start to experience the full spectrum of feeling, not just the extremes of joy and pain, but all the subtle gradations between. The bittersweet ache of watching a child grow up, the complex mixture of pride and humility that comes with genuine accomplishment, the tender melancholy of a perfect day that's coming to an end. These compound emotional states, these rich, layered experiences, are what give life its depth, its texture, its full spectrum color. And within that spectrum, joy returns too. Not the manic, desperate joy that comes from chasing highs to escape lows, but a quieter, steadier joy that arises naturally when you're fully present in your life. The joy of small pleasures, a perfect cup of coffee, a moment of connection with a friend, the particular quality of evening light in summer. The joy of being touched by beauty, by kindness, by the mysterious gift of being alive at all. The joy that doesn't depend on everything going right, but finds its way to you, even in imperfect circumstances, even in difficult times, because it's not about what's happening. It's about your capacity to be moved by what's happening. This is the gift that waits on the other side of emotional numbness. Not a life without pain, not a constant state of happiness, but the ability to feel fully, to be touched deeply, to participate completely in your own existence, to wake up each morning and experience that day, whatever it brings, not from behind a wall of protective distance, but from a place of intimate engagement with all that it means to be human. So, if something in this video stirred something in you, if it touched a place that resonates with your own experience, leave a comment with the word feeling, just that one word. Let it be a gentle acknowledgement of your own journey back to emotional aliveness, your own courage in taking even the smallest step toward reconnection. And if these words felt like a hand reaching out to you across the distance, subscribe. There's more here for you. Not quick fixes or forced positivity, but honest companionship for the sometimes messy, always meaningful journey back to the full spectrum life that's always been your birthright. The life where joy and sorrow, excitement and peace, all the colors of the emotional rainbow, paint your days with the vivid hues they were always meant to have.